This message is just for you. You are good enough. This is the episode for you. How do we bring our word lists to life and study the topics that seem boring or irrelevant, or the vocabulary that just seems so easily forgettable? Now, for a lot of us language learners, especially the ones that are doing it down the academic route with classes and courses, word lists have become a huge part of our life. I studied French and linguistics at Oxford, where literary translation is a big part of our course, and word lists were such a common part of our weekly routine, but they were so abstract. Pages and pages of plants, mushrooms, bird species, all sorts of things where I didn't actually know the English beforehand, and I certainly couldn't have identified that species of bird or that kind of shrub out of a lineup of photos. I just knew I needed to learn the French. And for so many of us, even if our vocabulary lists do reflect our real life usage of the language, they can be such a huge stumbling block. The problem is, word lists can be boring, especially when it's a topic that we aren't particularly excited about. The words just don't hold our attention when they're just sitting there as marks on a page, normally as well with a deadline attached to them. The task holds our attention because of the pressure of that deadline or that test, but the words themselves don't. And so, to make this whole exercise easier, today I wanted to share 3 ways that I use to make memorizing large quantities of words less boring and more meaningful. Number 1. Do whatever it takes to bring your own curiosity into the list itself so that it doesn't just feel like words on a page or on a screen. Basically, here we're looking for ways to get our brains engaged with the words from the very start. That might be by looking through and deciding how you're most likely to use each word on the list. Just thinking about some situations in your own day-to-day life where they could come up. It might be going through and improving the list that your school or university gave you, seeing if there are any words that you think should be on there but aren't. And that doesn't mean you need to add dozens of new words to the list, but the act of looking for 1 or 2 salient words that you think would come up a lot in that topic, and then going on a bit of a treasure hunt through your course book or your dictionary to find them, would absolutely have that positive effect. It might feel at first glance like you're adding to your workload, but you're not, because you're deepening your investment and your curiosity and making that task of memorizing easier. Another way would be to see if you have any questions about any of the words on the list. So things like, could I use it in this slightly adjacent context? Like, for example, the word potato is here, but could I say couch potato? It might also be splitting the list into subcategories, choosing those categories and deciding which words should go in which. It's anything that puts you back into that list. Number 2, bring those words into your world. Remember, the main aim of this whole exercise is to leverage your curiosity and anchor this boring task to your pre-existing knowledge and to the things that you already care about without needing to try. So you want to make connections as strong as possible wherever you can between these words and your genuine interests, the stuff that really fires you up. So let's take a simple example, like you need to learn a list of fruits. I've chosen fruits because they don't come up in day-to-day conversation that much, unlike things like pets or traveling. So you're going to need to work a bit harder to give them some context that goes simply from, I kind of need to learn this to get my exam score, to this list really matters to me. And also because classroom questions about fruits tend to be pretty boring, like, what's your favourite fruit? What fruits are really common in your country? So none of that is really going to get you excited about the possibility of having conversations about them in your new language. So how are we going to bring our fruit list into our world? Well, if you love traveling, look for the video tours of markets in a country that speaks that language. If you love cooking, look for recipes, ideally in video format, so that you aren't just reading, but you're also seeing and you can hear other people's descriptions of how it smells, how it tastes. Even if you don't understand every word that they're saying, you can see their reactions. Read the comments and the reviews of the recipe. And if you want to go all out, make the recipe, take pictures of it, upload it to Instagram with simple captions in your new language about what it is, and then reply to people's comments about it. That is a lot of language use about fruit. But it's not just recipes. Think outside the box. If you're an artist, find a watercolor artist from that country painting these fruits. What are the translations of the titles of those paintings? Or if you can find videos or tutorials of them painting a whole fruit bowl in real time, watch the video and see how many of the words from your list you can pick out. If you're a photographer, look up tips for creative fruit and veg photography, and the same for things like gardening. And number 3, another thing you can do is find a problem to solve. If you're naturally politically minded or passionate about current affairs, connect your list to a wider, bigger issue. For fruits, it might be something like pesticides or labour rights of the fruit pickers, maybe the effects of current cost of living on food bills in a country that speaks that language. Find the calls to action in your new language on social media. Find the campaigns and the news stories. Find the petitions. You don't need to understand all of it to get a lot out of this exercise. And finally, what stops a lot of people from even considering these things is that they think it's going to take too long. They say things like, why make this task any longer than it has to be? Why not just memorize our list as fast as we can, and then we can get on with the rest of our lives? And the answer is, deep learning and cramming are 2 completely different exercises. If you are trying to cram this list just to keep these words in your brain long enough to pass a vocab test tomorrow or next week, I agree. The only sensible thing to do is to prioritize efficiency. Get it done as fast and as painlessly as you can using all the memory tricks you know. But we all know that if we cram, once the deadline has passed, once we've done the exam or passed the module, we naturally press the mental delete button, ready for the next thing. Whereas if you've sought out all these real life connections and then you've told people about them in your new language and you've written about them on social media and you've replied to people's comments about them and brought up the issues in conversation a few times with language exchange partners, that's all going to stay in your head so much longer, because actually it's still a form of spaced repetition. And remember too, that the way you approach your word lists can change week to week, depending on what you're studying and what you need. It might be that you power through the things that are likely to keep coming up in conversation because they'll constantly be refreshing themselves anyway. And then you choose to go a bit slower on the things that you want to remember, but you don't naturally talk about as much. It might be on the weeks where you have loads of time, you undertake one big creative project about a topic. And on weeks where you're busier, you watch a couple of quick YouTube clips to bring that context in. The aim of this is never to put more pressure on yourself. The aim is to put yourself in the position where you can tell yourself with a straight face that you're only studying what you feel like studying and that your topics interest you. So good luck, language learners. Let me know what you're studying in the comments below. I would love to hear what you're up to this week. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow.